Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely met
with
and in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
Good morning, everyone.
good morning.
I can't express how profound the teaching is that we've been studying. It's Dogen Zenji's fascicle on Shoaku Makusa. And just in the beginning, it begins with, I'm trying to get my picture larger.
Rishi, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just trying to make my picture larger.
Are you on speaker view?
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'll show Aku Makusa. And it's a Dogen's fascicle on refraining from evil. So this is a very large and long fascicle, and we could be studying it for many, many years. And it's very interesting how Uchiyama Roshi presents this, in a very detailed manner in how to work with this. And this evil is not the way we think evil is, although evil is evil. So as we sit Zazen, the miracle of Zazen is that it dissolves the dualities that we see, evil and goodness. It dissolves any dualities, and it equally holds them as impartially. So what we see is just evil as evil and goodness as good. There's no comparison, making distinctions or competing with each other, which is best. There's no thinking about it. It's just as it is. So that's the miracle of Zazen. So let me just talk about. Actually, I was just thinking about when we practice Zazen, we were actually practicing the active participation in loss. in losing. I came across this saying from Uchiyama Roshi's teacher, gain is delusion and loss is enlightenment. So active participation in loss. There is no time in your life that you had the opportunity to practice loss. And this is true for everyone, because we don't want to lose, we want to gain. But what is this loss? So like in long sessions, it's sleepiness, exhaustion, pain in the legs, pain in the back, not focused, fear, anger, denial, resistance, all these things you're actually working with. And this is actually the miracle of Zazen. One time, or maybe 2 times or 3 times during the 24 hours of the day, we are working. We can work with this loss. So I'll come back to the main theme, but as Tom Wright is translating Uchiyama Roshi's refraining from evil, this zazen we do is really a great wonder, a mystery, a marvel. We have to aim, but in zazen there's no aim because there's no mark, there's no goal. This is loss. We're sitting for nothing. We're sitting for loss. This is remarkable. Whether it was in Buddha's time or in the 20th century, this is actually very revolutionary and remarkable that there is a discipline to do exactly this. So as he continues to go on, we have to aim, but there's no hitting the mark. There's no mark. If we were going to talk about facing a wall and hitting a mark, then we are better off going to pieces like a pachinko parlor and playing a game. Doing zazen, however, we aim with all our strength. What he means is that we aim with our being focused, being here with all our strength. To sit properly, but there is never any hitting of the mark because there's no mark at all. We can come back to this after I open the first part. Can you give me a glass of water? So this whole chapter comes from Buddha's teaching, and this was nearly 2,600 years ago. A gatha of an ancient Buddha says, refraining from committing various evils, carrying out all sorts of good actions, personally clarifying the mind. This is the essential teachings of all the Buddhas, regardless of what tradition or lineage it is. I read it again. Refraining from evil. Refraining from committing various evils, carrying out all sorts of good actions, personally clarifying this mind. This is the essential teachings of all Buddhas. We find this teaching to be held in common by the first 7 Buddhas. There were 7 Buddhas or 6 Buddhas before Buddha Shakyamuni, meaning the essence or truth of this was before. We find this teaching, and subsequently by our ancestors as well. These teachings were transmitted. They were imparted. This is Moku Den, silent transmission. They were transmitted. True teaching is transmitted. That's why it's not lost. Transmitted from the earlier Buddhas to their successors and were received directly by the latter from their predecessors. This holds true not only for the first 7 Buddhas. This is the teaching common to all Buddhas. We must ardently practice and carefully examine these universal truths. So refraining from is not to do something bad. That's not as what is meant here. So what could refraining from mean? Refraining from means basically letting go of our greed, anger, and ignorance, of our competing, of our anger, our fear. Refraining from means those things, letting go of it. That's the practice. That's the essence of practice, refraining from. So it says here, refraining from is not merely talking about not doing something bad. Of all the things in the world, there is no such fixed thing as some stone inside the plummet that exists as good or evil. Menzan Zuijo, a great master in the Edo period, evil is like bubbles on the surface of water, or like shadow things. Then he writes, evil should not be loathed, nor needless to say, evil should not be desired. This is called refraining from evil. Good too is like a phantom or an illusion. Likewise, it cannot be reached by human reason or thinking. There is nothing to hold on to, neither like goodness nor hating it. This is called doing all sorts of good. So in the Diamond Sutra, there's a passage that says, all things in this world are ephemeral, transitory. They're like a dream or phantoms. Everything is short-lived and fragile, like bubbles on water, or like shadows, like dewdrops, like a bolt of lightning. See clearly all creations or all dharmas in this way. That is, all things are impermanent, which of course also means that all things are just as they are. Shoho jiso, all things are just as they are. Therefore, you should look and see things as they truly are. This is in the world of impermanency, which we are living in. And with all these, what is it, Hiji Kim says, this is a crisis-ridden time with all these things happening. Pandemic, the climate change, fire and water, wind, destruction, or forests, overpopulation. This is really a time of uncertainty in how we face it, how we live with it, how we work with it. Regarding this passage, further on, there is another passage in the Diamond Sutra that reads, give rise to a spirit wherein there is no place to reside. How can you give rise to a spirit where there is no place for it to reside? The emphasis here is to act or function as impermanency, to function as shoho jiso. All things are just as they are. This is functioning in impermanency. This is functioning in our real time now. The line, see clearly all creations in this way, tells us to just sit zazen, the active participation of loss. Just to sit zazen without moving. That means not just your physical body, but your mind does not move. Without moving, observing clearly with open eyes. So in contrast to this passage of no movement, we have the other passage telling us to act or function. It's like refraining from, and carrying out. It's the function as impermanence. Together, the passage suggests acting or functioning while residing in impermanence. You know, to act and to function it could be like one movement. The two make one movement. The second one says to create a place with non-residing. This is actually what we're doing with the active participation laws. We are creating a place for no residing. Nothing resides. Nothing can reside here. This is not so easy, of course. It is not enough to personally experience all things being as they are. Rather, we need to act or function in accord with all things being as they are. What is it? Kadigura Roshi's first book was Returning to Silence. Second book was You Have to Say Something. And this part, I think, is very interesting. It addresses humanity in its crisis-ridden time. And it's not just addressed to Buddhists, but everyone, non-Buddhists, or just humanity itself is on a journey. Everyone is making the same journey. I think this paragraph is really beautiful. When carrying out is fully implemented, simply means when we are just doing something. The key word here is fully. Shoto is not being used in contrast to not full. So shoto is not being used in contrast to not fully. Just itself. Fully. With not one exception, all of us, this is without not one exception, people who practice, so-called practice, if you are practicing, and people who don't practice. That includes everyone. That includes humanity. Good people, bad people, practicing people, spiritual people, no spiritual people. Without one exception. That includes our family. All of us are, in fact, living out the reality of the life of the inclusive life of the universe. Whether we think so or not, it's beyond what we can think. Whether we think so or not, believe it or not, accept it or not, we are living out the reality of the life, the universal life. As an absolute, undeniable fact, we are living all inclusively with no connection to whatever scenery takes place in our heads. As an absolute, undeniable fact, we, everyone, without exception, is living all inclusively with no connection to whatever scenery takes place in our heads. Therefore, there is no such thing as partially and not fully. Thus, by carrying out actions aiming at all in all, meaning the universe, the inclusive universe, all manifests here, right now. This is a pretty powerful paragraph. So again, coming back to the beginning, a passage from the Genjo koan. Even though Dharma fills body and mind sufficiently, there is a feeling of something missing. And if you recall, Genjo is our temple name. Genjo koan, the koan of the present becoming the present. Genjo implies the absolute truth. The absolute Genjo koan, our temple name, means the absolute truth of the present becoming the present. Sonoma Mountain Zen Center is just our relative name, but this is our absolute name. The absolute truth. Genjo implies the absolute truth of the koan, meaning the present becoming the present. So something, Dharma fills body and mind sufficiently. There's a feeling of something missing. Since there's no mark or target, there is a sense of something being not quite satisfactory. What is crucial here is doing an act with all our strength, even with that feeling of insufficiency or incompleteness. Meaning, what is crucial here is continuing doing or acting with all our might, even with the fact of insufficiency or incompleteness. In other words, with loss, insufficient, and incompleteness. Participated, active, engage in it. So usually people get confused because they're always trying to fully satisfy themselves. If there were some way to know that while sitting zazen, we had become fully realized, this would amount to calculation or measuring satisfaction. But then this is not zazen, that's just thinking going on in our heads, a kind of self-observation. The same could be true when you have a deep sleep, a very deep sleep. You don't wake up during the sleep and say, I am having a deep sleep. It's only after that you realize that when you have awoken, you've had a very deep and peaceful sleep. So the same with zazen. True zazen is not just sitting with that feeling of its insufficiency. We don't do zazen in order to calculate our realization. We just act or sit, just manifest the present. The vivid eye, the clear eye, our intrinsic or natural universal identity, that which is from the beginning all in all meaning universal, cannot be measured. Even if it were measurable, it couldn't be done with the conditioned eye that sees only as conditions, as subject and object, as division. There is no other way than for your own eye to open naturally. There was no other person who can understand this than yourself. The just sitting of our universal identity is entirely different from the discriminating and calculating self of our self-centeredness. I end with this last paragraph. In the Shobo Genso Zuimonki as well, there is another passage that goes, as long as we attempt to evaluate and calculate the Buddha Dharma is with our thinking mind, there is no way to do it in 10,000 lifetimes. We attain the way only with the body. It's no good trying to figure out what Buddha Dharma is with our thinking mind. All there is doing, sitting at one's desk and contemplating, emerging into one realm of subject and object, the way so many Zen buffs like to do is utter nonsense. The way-seeking mind of the Tenzo is actualized by rolling up your sleeves. In other words, precisely in the midst of getting down to work, can we find the so-called oneness of subject and object. Thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we with all sentient beings together realize the Buddha way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roshi.
Thank you, Roshi.
Thank you,
Thank you, Roshi.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you,
Thank you, Roshi.